to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Good to be back in the President's chair. Had a grandchild at the last meeting 2 weeks ago, our fifth, so that's good. Everybody's healthy. If anyone is here wishing to speak under number 9, unscheduled audience participation, there is a form to be filled out that's probably in that back corner. Feel free to fill one of those out and give it to Angela, and then Angela will get it to me, and then I can properly handle that portion of the meeting. And there's some instructions on there that are that you need to read before you fill it out. Ms. Schaefer, do you want to do our attendance?
Yep, sure. President Donnelly?
Here.
Vice President D'Alessandro? Secretary Schaefer, here. Treasurer Bailey?
Here.
Trustee Griffith?
Here.
Trustee Foster?
Here.
Trustee Hanser? Present.
Mr. Superintendent, any changes to the board agenda?
None.
All right, consent agenda. Someone like to make that motion? Please, go ahead.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there support? Corey, support? Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Board of Education matters. Our first one is the bond scope.
Yeah, so we're going to have Mr. Chuck Lewis come up to the front, and he's going to give the board and our community an update for Series 2 of our bond work.
Good evening. My name is Chuck Lewis. Did I use this right? So as Tim just mentioned, I want to stress that this is the second series of the bond issue. So these are not the projects that are going to be happening this summer. These are the projects we'll be planning throughout this coming year and will be constructed in the summer of 2020. So it's the second series of the bond proceeds that we're talking about from the scope perspective. So you had this ahead of time in your board packet, but I think a couple of things that I'll point out. If you notice, the scope of work is kind of bundled, if you will. So at each of the schools, we're doing some security lighting on the buildings. On 3 of the sites, we're going to do site improvements for paving, sidewalks, and site lighting. So those will be packaged together. So what we're trying to do, when I say packaged, I mean the scope is being combined so that when we bid it, you get the best economy of scale that you can. Not 3 small packages, but one contractor doing a much larger project typically gets us a better price. So keep that in mind as I go through each of these, how that kind of pulls together in the scope. The first one here is Daniel Axford. For those that were involved in the bond, you'll remember these documents. These are the documents that we showed the community that we were going to do at all of these schools. So this scope isn't changing. It's just now happening in this series. The blue area indicates paving and sidewalk replacements. The little dots, the yellow E's and the blue N's are site lighting, and that's an existing pole that we're going to replace the fixtures and put in more energy efficient LED fixtures, and in some cases the poles need to be replaced. And the end ones are new, obviously with an N, for areas we think there are gaps in the plan for lighting from the safety perspective. So our goal is to get a consistently lit site with energy efficient lighting at all 3 of these elementary school sites. Some other things that are happening within the buildings and around the buildings. Again, I mentioned the replacing of the exterior wall lights, the security lights that are around the building entrances, that type of thing, with an LED fixture more consistent across all the buildings. And then at DA, we have a fire alarm system that's out of date and needs to be upgraded. So that would be a major change from that from an infrastructure perspective. At Clear Lake, similar type of site work. I missed the purple. The purple indicated the playground improvements, and it's a placeholder right now for a certain amount of money that we're going to use to improve our playgrounds at these schools. So we're going to affect the sites all at once, get it done in one summer, and then move on to the next series. So the similar type site paving, sidewalks, lighting, and wall-mounted fixtures at Clear Lake. You'll notice that none of the site work is shown here. because that'll be in the third series of work at Lakeville. But we are replacing the window coverings and the lighting around the perimeter, so that's why it's included here. But the site work will be in Series 3 in a couple of years. Leonard, similar type thing. The window coverings and the lighting and the site work will be done, again, packaged with the other schools' remaining site work. Every site, in the end, will have some improvements to paving and the site lighting. It's just how they're phased in the series. OES, a much larger site, a lot more paving to deal with. We also have a fire alarm to replace there as well. So those fire alarms will be, they show at different schools, but we'll be packaging them as one bid package for the contractor to bid on. At the middle school, significant, here's where a big part of our work is going to happen from an infrastructure perspective. There's a whole list of things here that are domestic water boiler, replace sanitary heating and piping. There's a ton of piping in this building that needs to be replaced. It's getting old and clogged and leaking. We have new HVAC controls that are piggybacking on the work that we're doing this summer from a controls perspective. It'll give a complete controls for the HVAC, the heating and ventilation system throughout the district at all buildings. We have a new fire alarm that we'll be installing, and again, the exterior lighting. So there's only 5 little sentences there, but that's a lot of work that's going to be happening in this building. And it'll be a significant increase in comfort and other things, other related to the environment within the classrooms. The high school, I've been here a long time as a resident, and the replacement of this floor is something we've talked about for a long time. So this would be, what we're going to do is replace all of the blue is where there is VCT or vinyl composition tile. And then the yellow is the carpet within the corridors. So we're going to replace that with what's called an LVT, the luxury vinyl tile. Luxury being kind of a marketing word. It's not really a luxury tile, but it's a very durable plank tile that is indestructible, very little maintenance. You no longer have to maintain it like we do the VCT in the buildings where you have to strip it down and wax it. For those that know what that takes, it's a lot of work and a lot of operational dollars. So in this case, we'll, number one, improve the look, the durability, and the appearance of the building. Along with that are some other upgrades to the pool. The pool finish, or the Marsite pool, that's the covering inside the tank of the pool, will be replaced, along with there's a HAQ unit, an air handling unit on the roof outside of the pool there that needs to be replaced and is failing. So that'll be done as part of this project as well. And a lot of window coverings being replaced overall throughout the building, and there are a lot of them. At the transportation building, there's some much needed improvements here related to not just the roof, but creating a more adequate lounge for the drivers and more toilet facilities and cleaning that up as far as a functional perspective is. So I think that's going to be a really impactful thing for the people that use that building and drive our kids to school every day on the bus. So this chart, if you read it, kind of outlines all of the different scope that I just mentioned and kind of gives you an idea of the scope of the design schedule. So like we did in Series 1, we'll spend most of 19 documenting this scope, putting it into packages, reviewing it and estimating it. It'll be bid before the end of the year. Our goal there is to get out in front of all the other schoolwork that typically gets bid in January, February, March. So we get out into the industry quicker, which means better pricing. And that work will then be awarded in the beginning of the year. We do a lot of, there's nothing really shown here, but there's a lot of work that happens before construction starts. And much like Phase 1, we'll be doing Series 2 in the summer of 2020. So that's, I think, kind of the end.
Board members, any comments or questions? Please, Corey and then Mary.
You had mentioned a couple of the schools have out-of-date or failing fire alarms. Why are we waiting another year to replace those?
No, they're not out of date. They need improvement. They need to be replaced from a controls perspective. They've been added on. They still meet the safety requirements.
Okay.
They're not unsafe by any means.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah.
Mary.
When you talk about window coverings for all these buildings, are you Can you tell us what specifically that is? That we're not talking about window treatments like curtains or something?
No, we're not. No.
So like, I'm not familiar
That's
with
a fair question.
what that is.
What we typically install, and we'll have to go through a selection process with this, but we typically install what's called a Mecco shade. It's a roller shade that has some amount of visibility and lets light in and blocks out most of the sun when you need it for, like we're doing
Okay.
today, projection things. But it's mostly roller shades as opposed to a vertical blind or certainly not drapery or any type of curtains.
Do we get to try and standardize that amongst all the buildings? Is that the idea too? That'll be
Yes.
nice. Okay, great.
Anything else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second on our list, under Board of Education matters, is a resolution to support the adequacy study. If you remember, the board did pass a resolution, I want to say in November or December of 17, and that resolution was in favor of the organization, the collaborative, to get together and actually do the work. Now that that work has been completed, we've been, not just us, but really all districts across the state of Michigan, have been asked if boards would pass resolutions in support of their findings. And so that really is what you have before you. It doesn't get into details other than boards saying that it is your desire that the state looks at the adequacy funding findings and fund schools appropriately. I'll say it that way. So if you have any questions, certainly let me know. But yeah, that's what the resolution is, and we will go for a vote on that at our next meeting.
Would we send it to the Department of Education or the state?
Probably both. Probably both.
Any comments, questions off, just to begin with? All right, so we'll be looking at this at the next meeting. All right. Are you doing that? Gotta make a statement.
Gotta say something.
All right, curriculum instruction, Mr. Weaver, looks like we have a few things.
Yeah, just a few. I heard today had a pretty quick board meeting while I was gone, so I'm doing my best tonight.
We appreciate it.
All right, the first up is going to be Ms. Kanja, who's going to introduce the family school liaisons at the elementary level.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Before I introduce the 3 family school liaisons from our elementary schools, I just want to maybe take a couple of steps back to our November meeting where Ken and I presented about our MTSS process, so our multi-tiered system of support. And at that meeting, we really shared about how that's different from RTI, the response to intervention, and that MTSS is really a look at the whole child. And that's really the effort from our Michigan Department of Education, is looking at the whole child, social emotional learning, really as a prerequisite to academic gains and growth. And so, I know I've shared this with the FSLs and actually a lot of staff members here in Oxford. One of the things that made me really proud to accept a job here and to come and work here is the progressive thinking and taking a chance in developing these positions. And so they've done some tremendous work. They're highly respected, and I know that a lot of people are really grateful for their roles and the work that they've done this year. So I'd like to introduce the 3 of them. We have Bridget Schultz, Kelly Pizzo, and Kevin Kalflesh. So I'm going to have them come up and present their presentation.
Just fill that on the yellow.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kelly Pizzo. I am the Family School Liaison who services Clear Lake Elementary as well as Leonard Elementary.
I'm Kevin Kauflish. I service Lakeville Elementary School.
And I'm Bridget Schultz. I service DA and OES. So the Family School Liaisons proactively assist students who are having social, emotional, and behavioral difficulties which may impact their learning. So we provide a link between home, school, and the community. So we wanted to give you a quick snapshot of a day in the life of a Family School Liaison. So some of our most important roles are to provide one-on-one individual support to students, as well as small group instruction, which typically consists of about 3 to 4 students, and classroom lessons. Some of the things that we cover in our small group, individual, and classroom lessons are things like topics like anxiety, conflict resolution, coping skills, academic achievement, emotional regulation, peer conflicts, grief and loss, self-control, self-esteem, social skills. And it's kind of cool because we can kind of work on the fly. So as needed, if there's a need in the the first grade classes and we need to go in there and do a classroom lesson, we're there to do that right away. We've also been kind of continuing and developing some building-wide behavior supports and PBIS, and also working and tracking truancy in each building and referring if needed.
Okay, so Kelly talked about some of our topics that we work with on our students. I want to go into how our students are identified that we work with, and how we collect our data, and what we do with the data. So this year, I think, was the first year that elementary schools as a whole introduced the Sabres screener assessment. The Sabres stands for the Social, Academic, and Emotional Behavior Risk Screener. This is part of our Fast Bridge program, and it was completed by every elementary school teacher. They did the screener on each of their students. They did it once at the beginning of the year, and then again at the end of the year, so kind of a pre and post screener. We got a lot of good feedback on this screener. It only took about 1 to 2 minutes per student. Once we got the scores from the students, it helped us identify which students may be at risk for social and emotional needs. So we have an example of kind of how we took that data and put it into a spreadsheet. From there, we were able to select which students would benefit from either a small group, weekly sessions, one-to-one services, or maybe we needed to go into a whole classroom or a whole grade level and complete some interventions. Between the 3 of us in the 5 schools that we service, we work directly with students, with 234 students. These are the students that we receive consent to work with them on a regular scheduled basis. So this would be our students that we work with one-to-one or our weekly group sessions. So that 234, that's roughly like 12% of our school population. So in MTSS terms, that's our tier 2 strategies. We also, at the beginning of the year, we heard a lot about how we needed to make an impact with our tier 1 or our whole school environment, the classroom environment. So we did this through our classroom lessons. Between the 3 of us, we did 283 lessons. These were lessons focused on social and emotional learning. So whatever was needed for that grade or that classroom, whether it was conflict management, coping strategies, emotion regulation, anything like that. And then we also implemented this year a student referral system, where if a student had an issue they wanted to talk about, whether it was something at home, something in the classroom, something with a friend, they could fill out this form and hand it in to us, and then we could reach out to them at a good time and deal with their needs, their social and emotional needs. So we received 307 requests at this point from students looking to receive some help. So I think that was impactful because, excuse me, that's a lot of weight, I think, off our teachers' shoulders, or the other social workers that were here on their own doing that last year. So we were able to kind of take that load and let the teachers focus on what they need to focus on.
I'm going to talk about a success story. So I'm going to talk about a male student at Daniel Axford, and if we look at the 2017-18 school year, this student had a lot of social and emotional needs. He's a general education student. He had 10 office referrals that were logged last year, and the district really didn't have a lot of interventions that we could offer him and his family. So then fast forward to the 2018-19 school year, He's had targeted intervention. He sees me one-to-one, so we do individual lessons. He was part of a group. We did make family connections. He's part of a check-in, check-out system. And since I've started working with this student, he has only had 3 office referrals. He hasn't been to the office since November, which is a huge success. And if we look at that Sabres data, like Kevin was talking about, his teacher rated him at a number 19, and just when she completed it in the spring for him, he was at a 37. So that is like almost in the out of the at-risk range. So although it might not sound like a huge over-the-top success for this student and the student's family and the teacher, it's like probably one of the best things that can happen to them. And as Kelly, Kevin, and I were putting this together, this presentation, we were all able to talk about these, like what might seem like small successes in all the buildings that are really impacting our students, our families, and our teachers. And our last slide, we just want to talk about the why. With the help from Anita, we always like to talk about the why. Like, why should the district continue to invest in the FSLs and social emotional learning? So when we talk about social emotional learning, we really want to think every student learns best when treated as the whole child. The whole child is their social, emotional, and their academic development. And their social and emotional development is directly related with those academics. So you have both of those pieces for the whole child. And the FSL position has brought that social emotional piece kind of to the forefront, and we're able to help support the students, the families, and the teachers with that social emotional. So it's right up there with the academics. So that's all we have for you guys. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, please.
A few questions for you. So you use Sabre to evaluate the students. What is it about that questionnaire that leads you to define a student in need? Like certain questions they ask, maybe you can give me an example of what those questions are.
Yeah.
So I understand.
So it's broken down into 3 categories. Each category has like 6 or 7 questions, and it looks at the student's social needs, their behavioral needs, and then academic, but not academic grades. We're talking about like those learning to learn skills, like did you bring your pencil and your paper and come sit down at the carpet table thing? And then the teacher rates them on a scale of, I think it's 0 to 3.
Yeah.
Or like never,
Never,
sometimes,
sometimes.
always, and then that kind of computes a score for us. And then Sabres came up with like a scoring range of this is at risk and this is you're not at risk.
So the teacher does the Sabre?
Yes, the teachers,
Okay, sorry.
the teachers do it, yeah. But there is a student screener form, which we did some piloting with this year and are looking at implementing that more next year, so we can have those 2 data points of what the teacher said and how the student said. From our piloting this, we have noticed that most of the time they correlate, but there are times where a teacher might think that the student socially and emotionally is doing well, but the student doesn't. They see themselves differently, or maybe they have something going on internally that they haven't told anybody yet.
So you find yourself at times having to counsel these kids on different topics?
Yeah, I would say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we are all social workers, so
Okay,
that's
I was
kind of
going
where our
there.
background comes from.
I
Yeah.
just want to say, how do you know?
Yeah, so by trade, we are all social workers.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 It's kind of cool to look and see the data, specific classrooms, if there are multiple children that are considered at risk, that we can go in and then look at that data and see, all right, we need to do like a more specific intervention, like whole class wide. So I was able to do that with one particular classroom at one of my schools. So it's been pretty cool to see the progress, because over time it's improved whole class wide.
Okay, one more question, then I'll shut up. So this is at an elementary school level, which is great. What about carrying it through to middle school? Because sometimes kids are not identified really well at that level, and with puberty changes or whatever, things can manifest at a middle school level. Is this something you can start then and implement through, maybe you have? You have a smile on your face.
I don't know the answer. I think that that's great. I think this position was kind of you know, the middle school and high school has counselors, as where elementary doesn't. So if we were, I think that would maybe go through the counselors. I think that's a great question, though.
Yeah.
I just don't have the answer.
I just see kids maybe not getting it, like I was saying, not getting identified early enough, and then this stuff can manifest when they get older, and if we can help them even at middle school level, you know, it'd be even better to kind of get all those areas. So that's it. Thanks. Tim,
Anyone else? Mary?
Well, we'll follow up to Eric's question, because I was curious too what the follow-up process is. So you've, like your success story student, so now what are we doing to make sure that this continues and that he continues to have the support that he needs? I mean, I think that's really important. And maybe it is bridging it with the counselors at the other schools or something, but
Yeah.
I think this is wonderful work, and we have to continue, or else it's just a little piece of it. Congratulations on 307 student referrals. I think that's amazing. That whatever program you're presenting to the students, they are comfortable enough to identify for themselves, you know, and step up and say, you know, gosh, can you help me? I think that's awesome. Congratulations. And the family connection, can you explain is that like a specific program, or are you just talking about connecting with families?
So, you know, really, we have the kids for 5 days a week, but they go home every single night.
Sure, exactly.
So it's really important when we're talking about behavior issues, they're probably seeing the same behaviors at home. And we can't do what we do without their support. So it's really creating those relationships and those connections so that their kids want to come to school and that their parents are also supporting what we do. So we'll implement like behavior charts that go home every night, or they'll send behavior charts of how their night went so we can, you know, give them positive feedback at school and like building those relationships. And it also helps with truancy too. At this age, like elementary, you think that most kids would love to come to school, but some don't. And again, creating that family connection of why can't we get them to school, what's going on.
Linking them to a lot of services too, like with youth assistants or summer camps and those kinds of things is huge too. We've done a lot of that.
Oh, great. So you're able to do that, connect people with programs like that. Yeah, that's awesome. What's your biggest roadblock? What's the biggest roadblock you've had this year?
Oh, that's a good question. Do you want to answer that? I don't know if I have any answers.
I think, well, to start, just everything was so new, right? The new position, new to the district, new to the area, so that took some time navigating. But I feel like everything's starting to fall into place now. Where things are going. Things are going.
Yeah.
I think so. Things are going really well.
Oh.
There's always a little challenge that come up.
Right. Well, that's good. It's okay. Thank you. Those are my
Chad, did you have something?
Yeah, just real quick. Could you help me understand again how the children are assessed, or who's assessed, and when does that actually happen?
So we did one at the beginning of the year. I believe the screener it's a research based, and they prefer the teacher to know the student for several weeks or several months before they actually do the assessment, so they have a good understanding of the student. And ask, I forget the exact number, but it's like 17, 18, 19 questions. And they're very simple questions, like it'll just say arguing, and then the teacher will select never, sometimes, often, almost always. So the teacher will just select that. So it's very quick. Ask questions like arguing, prepared for lessons, academic engagement. Trying to think of other ones, but like I said, it's separate into 3 sections: the social, emotional, and academic. It'll provide a score based on how that teacher assesses their own student. So like a score from 0 to 56 or 57. So the students that are from 0 to the 30, 33 range are identified as at risk. It'll even tell us if they're at risk for emotional, or at risk for academic, or at risk for social, or all 3. So then that kind of gives us a good starting point of, okay, this student would really benefit from a social skills group. And then we looked at the data that was just completed recently, like the post data, so we can kind of see the student growth. If their scores changed, maybe they went down, maybe we need to look at our interventions and how we service the students.
Okay. So all the children are assessed.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So can I add some clarifying points to that? So as part of MTSS is that we have screeners 3 times a year. That is part of a good model that we look at kids in the fall, winter, and spring academically. So Oxford is really advanced in the use of the Sabres and using a social emotional screener the same way that we do academics. Kevin is right that the Sabres is intended to be used after an adult has had several weeks of interactions with a student, so that there isn't this, you're kind of assessing on the fly what you think your perception of the kid is, but you've actually developed a relationship with a student first, and then you're able to assess them. And there are things on there, you know, can accept no, or maybe cries easily to a normal situation. And so next year, we did it twice this year. I mean, we really did it the second time. We kind of sped up the second time because the feedback from the teachers was really positive, that they were able to see students differently, objectively, and it only took a couple of minutes a student. But next year, moving forward, we plan to do probably mid to late October, again, giving teachers a chance to be with their students, maybe January, February, and then again, March, April. And the reason we put those windows in place for next year is we want a chance to look at the data and reevaluate the intervention groups as needed, so that we're not waiting until the end of the year, so that we actually have a chance to service students before the year ends if we can. So it'll be very similar to our academic screening.
Just one last one, and I know I've heard this before, but remind me if you could what the check-in, checkout system
Yeah,
is.
so that's a research-based method to help students with social and emotional issues. So for that student specifically, we create a goal. And because I work at 2 schools, Pam Beal and I are kind of like a tag team, and she'll check in with the students in the morning. What's your goal for today? How are we going to do it? You're going to have an awesome day. Like, let's rock it. Like, you know, giving them that awesome pep talk. And then at the end of the day, they come to my room and we check out. How'd you do on your goal? What are we going to change for tomorrow? Like, and then normally there's some kind of threshold, and if they reach that, they get like at DA we have paw tickets. So like you get a paw ticket, that's like the best thing in the whole world. Or like a piece of, or whatever it may be, to like keep reinforcing that positive behavior.
Okay.
So that's Checkin Checkout.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dan?
So not so much a question for them, but a question for maybe Tim and Sam.
Okay.
And whoever wants to field it. Do we have a placeholder for this in the budget every year?
Yes.
Okay. Reason it being is we have identified 307 students that have identified that this is a program that would be very useful for them. I would imagine we have more, we just haven't had the time or the resources to get to that spot. Of those 307 students that we've identified, is there any norm that we can say that if we get to them earlier, their opportunity for their educational process increases? Is it 2%, 5%, 10%? I mean, I'm sure there's not a fixed in hard number, but is there data around it that helps us kind of target, say, okay, if 307 is what we have now, if we put in an early, early age, if we put more effort into it, do we get 400? And we stem it before they get to that high school process where they're not identified.
So
It's a
in
long
your
question, sorry.
identification process, were all 307 shown to be at risk?
Well, the 307, I think, comes from like the students, and those
Right.
are students that just said like, hey, I'm having a problem. Those 307 that aren't necessarily ones that came in at risk, but I think that we can all say that there's like probably 10% of our population that we call our frequent flyers. And those are ones that are filling out the forms, that came in at risk at Sabres, that teachers are bringing to our MTSS meetings. I would say it's a pretty consistent population.
So you have 2 types of children they're seeing. They're seeing children that are more on the spot and having issues, and then there's also ones that have multiple issues. And those are the ones that tend to show by Sabres and others measures that they're at risk. So don't want to give the impression that all 307 kids
right.
are at risk emotionally and so forth.
Right.
They may be at different points, and all kids, probably at the elementary level, middle school level, are gonna go through periods where they need to talk to somebody. So, research has shown, and I'll let Ms. Kanja answer as well too, you know, any intervention you can do earlier is gonna be, you're gonna be better off in the end. That is why, when we started looking at MTSS 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we started with the elementary, and by far the elementary system is by far more developed. Although the middle school and high school are rushing to get caught up, but the middle school, or the elementary, we have put most of our resources towards, and our at-risk dollars, because the idea being if we can put a fix to it there, then that'll be less students at the middle school and high school. Now, if you're asking me for a precise number, I don't know that I can give you a precise number, but I would look for, like in our academic, just for a quick example, in FAST, for the academics, we have seen a drop of 1/3 of our kids. We used to have, we used the 30th percentile nationally as a threshold to identify kids. We have seen that number over the 3 years, 4 years that we have been doing this now, drop by 1/3.
That's what I'm looking for.
So that type of effort, that's in just the academics. This is the first year for this program. We still have a lot to do. Just to answer the other questions about what happens at the secondary level as well too. I mean, part of for this program is going to be looking at how we roll this up to the middle school, how we hand off the information. At the middle school and the high school, we have counselors and we have deans that all help with the positive behavior or environment of the schools. The middle school has the advisory program, which does a lot of like the lessons that they were talking about are done by teachers in that regard, as well as the dean helps out with, and also the counselors and the admin also help out with academic skills. They have advisory classes that are specifically suited for kids that struggle with those academic skills or approaches to learning, as we call it in IB terms. And we also have certain academic classes as well too. So that is maintained and brought up through. The deans also help with positive behavior because we really have a philosophy since we put the deans in that it's not just about consequences, that it's also about positive behavior and encouraging better behavior. So like the middle school still has the CATS awards that we started way back where you get to put your name in, get a candy bar, it encourages good behavior. My son won just bragging about a week ago. So it's still going on and it's still, I mean, he was fired up that he got his name actually picked. So we do that at the middle school level. The other thing that we're introducing now is called restorative circles, which is a practice of teachers working specifically on building a community of learners in their classroom. We just trained about 12 teachers at the high school, and I think it was about 10 or 12 teachers at the middle school. And we're going to look at trying to take this further and trying to spread this and trying to, I had talked with Mrs. Beasley about making sure that this becomes part of advisory as well too, that you're taking time to create a culture and a community among the learners. Kids that have a relationship with an adult learn 100 times better than a kid that does not feel connected to a school. That is just common sense. And so we're really looking at trying to build that, and then also looking at how we can take what we're building on at the elementary level, and do we want to, and how do we build on it at the middle school and the high school level. High school level as well has the dean, also 4 counselors that also work on all of this. We're looking at that as one of the, and I think we talked about it when we were talking with MTSS, that is one of the areas in which the high school struggles at times because of the emphasis on academic content. It's hard to carve out time. We are in the process of looking at options for that and had some healthy discussions with staff just the other day on that. So Mr. Wolf is working hard on trying to figure out what we can do to kind of carve out that time because it's important for that positive behavior and trying to help children as they still are. They may look like adults when you walk through those halls, but they are still children and they are still developing and they still have a long ways to go. And sometimes we're fooled at the high school level thinking that they are mature adults and they are not. And so, even though they will tell you they are. And so we're working on doing that as well too. And Mrs. Pam Fine also is up there as well, helping on both the middle school and the high school with bullying issues specifically, as well as looking at what she can add to the restorative practices, as well as doing positive behavior as well. And she'll become more instrumental in that part when we are able to get a vehicle in which we can more effectively put positive behavior into the high school. So that kind of, we are building on this, but it is as we go. And like, this is the first year, and we've got to see where the results come, and, you know, it's already paying dividends, and we've heard a lot from the teachers at the elementary level already. As, you know, kids are able to better focus, concentrate, work, they get more tools, getting tools in their tool bags. We forget just how valuable parents are, and then sometimes parents forget that how valuable they are, and some of these tools and skills are not being instilled in the children, and that's why we're seeing more of a need, and quite frankly, that social emotional learning is a huge topic right now all across the nation.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. Anything else? Corey?
How do you keep this going? Do we have any resources for that dreaded summer vacation when, I mean, you've built up this momentum and then 3 months with no structure, nothing? What keeps them from falling back where they were? Do we have any?
Balance scale. No, just.
And now Ken Weaver takes some sabbatical.
Take two.
I mean, this is our first year, so I can't like fully speak to that, but I will say like we do have resources to send kids to camp. Kids I think that are kind of our frequent flyers, like we've already been getting ready for those conversations, and that's probably like the social worker in us of like, you gotta get ready for termination at some point. Like we're building up for summer, we only have 31 days left, if anyone's counting, and kind of getting ready and preparing our families and our kids the best we can, but
One thing I would add too is that hopefully we're not just putting a Band-Aid over this situation, we are trying to develop skills in them that they can then move forward with. The whole idea is, it's kind of like, if you look at some interventions in the past, used to be just let's help them with their homework. That just puts a Band-Aid over it and the kid does his homework for the one day and we may feel better about ourselves. But the kid doesn't learn intrinsically why he or she should be doing homework. This is an approach, hopefully, that will instill these skills in the children and hopefully they'll carry them forward and that you won't be seeing them back in the MTSS tier system. That is the hope, is that we're building resiliency in the children and that they'll be able to address this on their own and maybe occasionally with some assistance to go back. That is the hope and success, so that they carry these into the summer with them. Of course, they'll probably be the ones that they know, that probably will be the first people or the first kids they touch base with when they come back in the fall as well. I mean, that's just part of the system that we have set up in the United States.
Thank you.
Chad?
Just real quick, so looking at these numbers, right, just the student referrals alone at 307, what, I guess, where do you place that threshold where we decide that we need to add additional liaisons, right? We've got 3 terrific liaisons across the 5 schools right now. I guess at what point do we look at adding additional?
That's a question that we would have to talk with Ms. Ganja on as well too, as far as where we would see that. I don't know that we have a number, because it's also hard that 307 is that that's not 307 kids that need consistent help. It's kids that have needed help at one point or another, and is the issue temporary? So I think from getting anecdotal feedback and looking at numbers and servicing in their records as well too, we would sit down at the end of the year. You gotta remember that this is the first year. We're learning, this is a new position as well, and so we're learning as we go, and we try to learn from others who have this position. We're not the first to have this, so we constantly in contact with people at Teaching and Learning, Oakland schools and so forth, and trying to learn from others as to how to balance this and how to make sure that we spread our resources out, because it's pretty hard. I mean, there's always going to be more need than what you have dollars, especially at the rate that we're funding. So we try to balance all of that out, because we do have needs at the middle school level, at the high school level, at OVA, and so we got needs all over the district for services like this. So we try to look at it and try to balance and make sure we approach. Now, we want to get the most bang for our buck, and that's why I go back to why we started at the elementary level. Our MTSS prior to 14-15 was pretty much just a reading specialist in each building, except for maybe Lakeville, which had a few pairs because of Title I. We've increased that dramatically. We've increased with the FSLs. I mean, we have done a lot of work to get to this point. We've got a lot of work yet to go. But as far as, quite honestly, looking at like resources and how many more rabbits we can pull out of a hat, we're kind of running thin, all right? We're getting towards the end of unless the governor comes up with a huge funding increase, which we're all praying for as well. But really, quite honestly, I mean, it's really just about now making sure our resources that we're using are used effectively, and that's through program evaluation, and that's where we brought in Mrs. Russell, who is our school or general ed psychologist, who is helping us run program evaluations, and that's where we're looking at just not only behavior interventions, but academic interventions. And she's getting her feet. We just hired her in January, so she's still learning the district, but one of the expectations will be that she helps us with this so that we're using our resources that we do have in the best possible manner. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Yes?
So, just so I understand your audience of kids, are these gen ed kids or are these like 504 IEP kids?
These are gen ed kids.
Non-special ed kids?
Non-special ed.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
But would they potentially go into having maybe like a 504, they have behavioral accommodations that needed to be met or?
Yeah, so we have
but
some.
you wouldn't see a special ed kid?
No, nope. So, some
They have
kids
their own people?
Yeah. Some kids have 504s that we see because that's technically not considered special ed. Right?
Right.
You're right.
But the kids that we see do not have IEPs, although this year has been great working with my team over there.
Yeah.
Because we can service them and try the least restrictive environment before we can, we can send them on to them and they can say like, yes, we have tried every intervention before qualifying.
Yeah, it is important to keep that connection between special ed and the gen ed. We kind of help each other go back and forth, and sometimes, yes, there is gen ed kids that are helped out through special ed services, and then vice versa.
I love it.
We try to just help out, and where the best resources are, we try to make it work for everyone.
Yes,
It's important.
I love the program. I think it's fantastic. I think restorative practices is fantastic.
Yes, sir.
So, Kelly, Kevin, Bridget, I want you to know that maybe out of all of the new programming that we've instilled, at least in the last 4 years, I want you to know probably the family school liaison position I've received the most feedback. From any position or program that we've implemented, and it's
Positive
to a T. It's all been positive. And so I want you to I think I also want you to know that you're going to have referral number 308 tonight, and I'd like some help with conflict resolution. I love a little one-on-one help. No, really a great job.
Fantastic. Love
To
it.
Corey's question of summertime, may I suggest the Colleen Schultz summer swim program? So just let her know that she's been signed up.
I'll let Colleen know.
Just suck her back in.
I'll give her a call if she answers.
Great.
I just want to reiterate what Tim said. Everything that I hear is so positive. I wrote next to there, we got to change you guys' title to Family School Liaison and Teacher Pressure Relief Valves. But you're changing the environment within the schools, and that's terrific. So thank you very much. And Mr. Weaver, you have more.
Yes, as you may or may not know, we have recently completed some surveys. We're in the process. Those were the district ones that were given in March. And that was basically over the district. Currently, the parents have been asked to fill out the buildings surveys, and those are specific questions on the building. Just gotta find the right. So this is the, so they're doing the ones over the building right now. I think the parents just ended on Friday. We still have it open. I believe the principals are at the 8th grade level and the 9th through 12th are doing the student survey portion. We gave them a little bit of extra time because of the testing and also because of the inclement weather and pushing everything back. So we gave the window a little bit longer to complete the student part of the survey. So this is the survey results for the district surveys, and I'm just going to quickly kind of go through with them. Eventually, the whole survey will be placed on the website, but I'm going to try to go through these quickly as you also have them in front of you as well too. So we asked them different questions. The first question that we asked them on was basically a repeat from the year before, and it was, are you aware of the funding differences in the state of Michigan? Most people by this time are answering yes, although the first couple of years we asked the question, they didn't really realize that. It was astonishing as to how many had. But as time has gone, they have. And now at this point, we ask them, in case we were looking at like you did tonight with the resolution, as if we want to go to parents and start asking parents for assistance in pushing on the state legislature to start addressing this issue a little bit more aggressively. As you can see, we looked at looking at what type of action they would take, and this has to do with reading an article, contacting state government, and most parents came back and said, and staff, all surveys or slides that you see, on one side on the left as you're looking at it up here, on the left is the staff responses, and on the right is the parent responses. So I put them up together over the same question and match them up as you go through. So as you go through, you can see how they responded. Mr. Throne?
I would just say that you're gonna see across all of these how surprisingly consistent our employees, how they rank things with our parents. I mean, like eerily close. When one goes up, the other one goes up. When one goes down, the other one goes down. Even in the same proportions. And so, yeah, this is just an example, but I was thinking that, you know, that's one of my takeaways was how close our own employees were to our parents and how they responded to all the questions. Go ahead.
Okay, I thought we had discussed another topic you wanted to talk about, but.
Go ahead, say it.
Well, you were
I don't know, remind me.
Sorry, sir. You were going to talk about the funding with this question and how, even though the funding has gone up a little bit over time, that the state is actually, a certain percentage of funding has been backdoored in the fact that we have increased our costs.
Yes, thank you. So, a lot of people have asked me in the recent days, especially with the governor's proposal of an increase in 45 cents per gallon gas tax. What are my thoughts and beliefs on that? And one of the things that people just don't understand is that I'm going to try to say it as succinctly as I can. I totally understand the governor's method for why she's doing what she's doing. And here's why she's doing it. All the way back to 1994 when we passed Proposal A, that money in the school aid fund was to go to schools K-12. Even as recently as today, I saw an article where over the last numerous years, I'll say the last decade, the legislature has, in essence, taken money out of the school aid fund, paid for other things that should be coming out of the general fund, and to the tune of $4.5 billion has been taken out of the school aid fund. The governor is asking for the gas tax increase because it forces the legislature to spend that money on the roads. They can't reapportion things. By forcing the legislature to fund the roads through the gas tax, it then allows them to take the money and put back into the school aid fund and spend it on schools where it was originally appropriated. And so I want people to try and understand, you know, why in the world are they doing this when we have other needs and those types of things. It's basically because people trust local governments more than state governments. So I've also been reading a lot where there's been a huge increase in local passage of taxes, whether it's millages, bonds, things like that. And the question is, why are people willing to vote or be in favor of something local, but totally against a state tax? And my belief is control. They believe that they can hold local people accountable, just like our people voted for our bond. If we start doing things that we said we weren't going to do in our bond, they know where to come, who to see, who to have a gripe with. The further up in state government you go, when you pass a state tax, the further it gets away from that control. And people just don't trust that the state will do what they say with tax dollars, or they're more willing to trust a local official. So, yeah, those are just some of my thoughts, and I think I'll just end on, I want to remind our public that in Oakland County, you have 28 public school districts. We are the second from the bottom of how much we are funded per pupil. Second from the bottom. Only South Lyon gets less per pupil in revenue than Oxford Community Schools. And yet, we have to compete, we have to provide opportunities. We're providing family school liaisons when probably half the other districts are not. It becomes very challenging on how to appropriate the dollars we do have and where we want to spend more money when we are funded at the very bottom. And so, I'm going to quit before I get in trouble. Keep going.
Thank you, sir. All right, well, we're going to have to practice our timing a little bit, as you can see, about that, but thank you. All right, the next question that we asked was the district grade, and happy to report staff saw the school district as a 90%, either a B or an A, and parents were asked the same question, and you got 85%, so very encouraging there, that I think parents would say overall they're pretty pleased with what their children are experiencing at school, partly due to the Family School Liaisons. Mission, this is an important question to us, because this really speaks to our are we walking the walk? This is, are we doing what we say we're supposed to be doing? And this is living up to our mission. This defines who we are, where we're going, gives us a direction, and as you can see overwhelmingly, either it's like 74% say that we're either very good or outstanding, and at least another 20% say at least good as to that we're upholding our mission. So that's very encouraging as well. And like I said, this one's kind of near and dear to our hearts, especially at central office, as we kind of set the stride for the rest of the district. If you have any questions on any of these or any concerns or anything, please, you can stop me in the middle. You don't have to wait to the end. This question was on balanced calendar. This is looking at trying to reduce that summer slide that concerns us all. As you know, the school calendars were set up basically when we were an agricultural society. I mean, that is why we have the calendar that we have today. It seems inane to me that we would necessarily always just stick with that, because that's the way it's always done. But good heavens, you try to change this now, and it's a big issue. Although the research does show narrowing that summer gap does help with a bit of the summer slide and helping kids come back and maintaining that academic and social emotional growth as well too. So that's something that we would like to consider down the road maybe, but obviously we'll be working with you and others as well too.
I would just add to that I want to make sure I state this publicly again, and that this is just like the first step in us even asking the question if this is something we want to do. All right, we're not looking to like change our calendar for next year or anything like that. we've got committees that we're setting up and a whole bunch of things. And so I want to just remove maybe some anxiety that parents or community or employees may have, and that just because we're asking the question doesn't mean we're going to do something. But we at least want to start asking questions.
Yeah, we need to do what's best for kids, and sometimes that does inconvenience us a little bit as adults, but we also want to make a prudent decision. So, yes, as Mr. Perron said, this is just the very first step. We're long ways away from actually doing anything. Elementary, secondary start time, that was another initiative or idea, I guess, so to speak, brought up because of just research and seeing that as it is starting to as well. You're starting to see this issue come up across the nation as well, and it is really, you're starting to see that, you know, research has shown elementary kids do better in the morning. High school kids tend to stay up later and want to sleep in later. And if you have had kids or currently have kids, you would know this to be true. Especially on Saturdays. I can remember on Saturday mornings with my kids 10 years ago, it's like my good day to sleep in because I have church on Sundays, and so it's like always looking forward to Saturdays. And yeah, without doubt, at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'd have some kid pouncing on me. So you know that the kids are better to get up. Nowadays, I can't bomb them out of bed at 8 o'clock. Good heavens. If they act like that, it's like 4 in the morning. So this is just to consider. Once again, we're a ways away from actually doing anything at this point. And we will be informing everyone, including people in all these decisions. This is not just a cabinet decision or even a staff decision. We will get the community and everybody involved in this as we move forward, as we're looking at this. And it may end up we don't do anything. Lastly, then we finished up with some questions about services that are district-wide. I'm happy to report that transportation and all of them pretty much checked out, doing very well, kind of what we thought. They asked a few other questions on, you know, handling issues on the buses and stuff like that, and that was important. We asked the directors what questions they would like us to ask for them, and they all offered some different input as to what they would like to see on the survey. So those questions that you saw came directly from them. So I didn't put them all on there. I just wanted you to see as far as transportation doing a good job. Food services, fantastic. I gave them 2 thumbs up myself, especially after my trip to India. No, I'm just kidding. I did pretty good there, actually, I will tell you. And then building facilities as well, too. Always could be a little cleaner. I think that's one of those you never win kind of situations. Everybody always thinks it could be a little cleaner. Just like my house, I could clean it from now to whenever and then turn around and it's dirty the next day. So, and just through use, that's what happens. But I think we're pretty satisfied with those things. And Mr. Sarkins and Mr. Barner keep on top of the company that helps us with that. And so we address issues as we bring them up. But it's still good to get feedback as well. Any questions? Eric?
What was the percentage of staff and parents that actually took the survey?
Oh, let's see, we ended up with staff, I think it ended up, oh gosh, Mrs. Marshall sent me the data and I looked at it and then now I forgot. I think it was about almost 40% of staff filled out the survey and the parent responses were around 600 or 700, I want to say. So that's pretty good. Statistically, once you hit a number, as you may well know, you're pretty much valid for any numbers up to like 10,000, 20,000, and so we pretty much cleared that with the parents to say that, yeah, that's pretty good representation of the parents. It is random. It's up to them to fill in. We ask it of all parents. We ask it of all staff. So everybody has the opportunity. It's not like they were cherry-picked. And then when we do the student ones for the building ones as well, we try to get at least 50% is what I've asked of the buildings to be able to survey the students. So we get a fair representation and we're not cherry picking the results or anything.
It seems pretty low for staff, only 40%. Is it like, comparing to other years, what we've seen before? Because it's, you know, it's less than half of your staff that's actually.
I think it's about the same as what we've had before. I could be wrong, because we also asked them for the building one as well, too. So staff filled this out a couple of times. And I don't know, I mean, we could mandatory make them fill it out, but there's been a big resistance to do that. So it's really up to them, and we ask them And we give them, even sometimes, we give them time during their day to actually do that. The survey has been reduced so that it is more likely to be filled out as well too. That may take some time, but also at the same time, we don't want to be, we want it to be anonymous, so it's very, so we don't track IP addresses, we don't try to do any of that, so it's really up to them to fill the survey out. And I'll be honest, you know, we still get that question sometimes as to staff worried about, you know, is it truly anonymous? So we try not to put pressure on them to fill it out.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing, I think. That you only have 40% of your staff that's participating.
I will look and see exactly what the percentage is, because it might be even a little higher than that. I don't want to give you 50% or 60%, and I had the number in my head, but as I'm getting older, some things are coming out quicker.
I mean,
besides my hair.
I take every opportunity I can at work to tell them how I feel. I've never played in my favor, but
I'm sure not many of us are surprised by that.
We would like to hear from everyone, but like I said, it is a real concern, is we don't want them also to feel like we're tracking them and putting pressure on them and twisting arms. And so we walk that fine line between letting them do it on their own and then also saying, okay, at a certain percentage, is it really going to change the results?
I don't know, it's more than half, so it could. I mean, maybe you're getting the people who are super happy and love everything about life, and those are the ones that are doing it. Whereas the disgruntled people are just saying, I can't affect change by putting my results in. So, I don't know. I'm not a statistician, I say, right? I don't deal with stuff like that. I'm just a good engineer, but anyway, it's the thought.
I'll look and get you the exact number. I'll email Mr. Throne and he can send it out to you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Weaver, would you mind pulling up our presentation?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jill Mom. I think I've met all of you. I had the pleasure of traveling to India with Mr. Weaver from April 6th through April 13th.
And it truly was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. I first want to clarify, just in case you're curious, I think the board knows, but for anyone listening, the trip was paid for in its entirety by American Education Gateway, which is our partner out of New Jersey that helps us to find students from India. We did have some small incidental costs for, a meal here or there, but all lodging and all travel expenses were paid by AEG. But I do want to thank the board and thank Mr. Throne and Mr. Weaver for investing both two administrators' time into this, because I do recognize that was a week that he was not in the school district, and I thought it was important to tell you why and what we were doing and kind of substantiate that absence. I think it was worthwhile, but I might have, a less subjective opinion about it. I think Mr. Weaver would say the same. We went with two major objectives in mind. One, to establish new relationships. So previously our strategy in India was to work with schools, similar to the way we have done in China over the years. And we were finding that the school systems were not giving us or referring us their students. And we couldn't quite figure out what the resistance was. They were welcoming us on tours and encouraging us to sign MOUs or sister school relationships, but we weren't getting kids. And so in working with a few different counselors and different agencies over the last year, we kind of surmised it was because we would be then getting the tuition money from those kids that the school would no longer be receiving the funding from. So they wanted the relationship with an American entity, but they didn't want to lose their top students. So we kind of completely changed our strategy this trip and worked, and we didn't move around very much. We kind of stayed in the same spot and set up shop in an office that was provided to us by a partner of our partner who is in India. And the schools, a few different school leaders came to us, but mostly families came to us. Interested students and their parents came and sat and had deep conversations with us. And that was really much more meaningful and just better work than we've done in the past in the country. I just have our flight itinerary up there. We were on the plane longer than we anticipated. There are no direct flights from Detroit, so we had to stop in Paris.
I was a little offended. Jill did insist on a seat not next to me or near me. Tried to get as far away from me. I kept trying to change seats, but the whole time it seemed to be
we both wanted aisle seats, and Delta, out of courtesy, kept putting us together. Like, even though I had chosen it.
Rather tall. And
Yeah.
yes, it was, the ILCs were preferred. I would say this, I would add that it was, I think, a very productive trip. We got there, and on the first day, we started meeting with a gentleman named by the St. Paul. And he really has, I think, a good, how to say it, business sense, and also, I think, a good approach as far as being reasonable and looking out for the best interests of students. Although he's a business and looking to profit eventually off of this, I think he also, has a measured approach to the fact that he is also looking out for the best interests of the children that he's over there with and that he's helping. He runs a business where he helps them prepare for the another version of the TOEFL, the IELT, and also helps them prepare for visa and access to education in the United States. And so, but I would say that I think too, he has a vested interest also in making sure that his clients get what they need. And that he was very firm on that. We must have heard the plan several times. But it was a very, I thought, encouraging sign that he was very interested in the interest of the child as well too. And that's what we were there for. So I thought it was a very productive trip. We got to learn a lot, how the educational system worked, set up and talking with parents and getting to see they were much different, just from my personal experience, because I also went to China. Chinese parents and Indian parents are completely different, and their educational system is completely different. And I think when we started out with our Indian partnership and looking to branch out, I think we kind of went more with the mindset of how we approach China, and it really helped to be there to actually see the interactions and how they work and how they interact with their children. It's very different, very closer to how Americans are with their children. Exactly, in many ways.
Can I clarify that point? So the Chinese families that we worked with in the past, most of the students have been living in a boarding school. Some of whom since they were 4 years old, most of the students at least from 5 or 6 onward. Those were the students that were in the pipeline to go to an American school. And so they'd been away from their parents. There wasn't this resistance to send them away because they'd already been away from home. It wasn't a big piece of the interview for us. That was a given. These students, everyone that we met, lived with their parents. And so it was a different mindset. They're having family dinners every evening. So I don't want to stereotype all Chinese families or all Indian families, but just the schools that we've worked with were boarding schools primarily versus non-hostel schools, they call them in India. They don't have a hostel or a living arrangement for the students. They stay at home.
Yeah, and most of the schools in China are more where the kid goes off and stays there on campus versus the ones in India where they're going during the day and then coming home. So
I want to say I stole one selfie with Mr. Weaver. The only one for the whole trip. But our days were busy. I'm not going to go through every single bulleted point, but I just wanted you to see that we weren't sitting in our hotel or going out, enjoying the weather. We were sitting in this very small office that we had our Oxford shirts on most days, and the people were coming to us. Like I said, we wasted very little time in travel. Our office was probably about a 6-minute drive from the hotel.
Worked out great.
It's us receiving our blessings in the morning at one of the places we did go to. This appeared in some local media, this advertisement that obviously we didn't pay for, our educational partner paid for. And you'll notice I highlighted throughout which students were accepted. We did accept 5 students on the spot during interviews. And I want to let you know we've already received a deposit for tuition from one student, and the other just got the wiring instructions this morning. So we have at least, I think, 2 students for the fall, so that's already 2 times as many as we have right now. So
They'll come here next year for the year, like the academic year, and like stay with a host family. Like they're going to come here.
Correct.
As an exchange student.
So our marketing pitch, if you will, because Mr. Weaver and I had it down to a science when the parents came in, but the concept being the only students who were at this IELTS testing center, the only students that St. Paul, that individual you mentioned, has relationships with, are planning to go to either an American or a UK or Australian school. That's the only reason you would take this assessment, is for international education. So we've already screened out anyone who's not interested in going abroad. Now our marketing pitch is, if you're going to come as a college student and be an adult in our system, wouldn't it be better to come with the comfort of being a child still in a host home and better understanding the culture and sort of the different way that we approach academics before you're expected to be a grown-up right away as a freshman in college? And so it's allowing them that opportunity to be a kid in America, instead of going right from being a child in India to an adult in the US.
Yeah, and this is a picture of the family that we had dinner with. We started, and one thing that was interesting, culturally different, is they do eat a lot later. We started dinner, about 9 o'clock? And then kept eating.
First course.
Yeah, kept eating until 11:30. Which was, it was really, quite honestly, I ate quite a bit of food. You may know I'm a picky eater.
No.
Worse than that, I'm very picky. And pizza was not served. They had some version over there, but I wasn't in trouble with that. But it was a very lovely meal. It was great company. But what we found was a lot of the parents really wanted to know about us and what was it in, why were we over there as far as what was in it for us and what we were trying to do, because they were concerned about the welfare of their children and how they would be accepted over here and how they would be treated and cared for. I mean, they were very much, and you could see the relief in their face when we explained what we were trying to do and how we were looking at trying to bring a little bit of ethnic diversity to our school and a little bit of experience with international students and cultures, and trying to just give a little bit of a diversity to our high school and give kids a chance to interact with other cultures, as you probably in your jobs as engineers and so forth probably do on a somewhat regular basis. I know in my own church that we've got like 6 or 7 engineers that work for Chrysler, GM, and all those, and they're constantly traveling. And they're constantly working with people from other cultures and other ethnic backgrounds. And so we are trying to introduce, and once they got that and they understood that and could see that, I think that we were sincere, you could see them relax quite a bit.
Coming from a couple of swim parents, dinner at 9 o'clock isn't normal.
This is what we do.
I do want to highlight that we were able to meet with some embassy officers. I'm not sure if you're all aware, but we did have a student who was unable to come study with us this fall that was accepted and had paid tuition because of a visa issue, and we were never able to kind of get that information. So I thought we could use that time, it was actually Mr. Throne's idea, use that time in the country to meet with them and see what we could glean from a conversation. And I think it was a very productive, very quick, but very productive conversation at the embassy. They weren't very familiar with high school programming. They said, we constantly get students coming in here for F1 visas, going to the university level. We don't know about a lot of high school programs. So it immediately creates a scrutiny in the interview. So we gave them every piece of literature we could to let them learn more and more about us, and kind of took up as much time of theirs that they were willing to give to teach them about our program, because they did say it was unusual and that they were actually really pleased to put faces to a program, and we're hoping that that'll kind of help our students.
Because I think they were approaching high school kids much like they would college kids. And a high school kid's not going to be able to articulate career plans necessarily as well, and some of that. So that gave us information to help us coach parents or tell parents kind of like what are they looking for, so that they can get that connection as well too. And the kids are looking for it. It's not like we're telling them, hey, here's the answers to the test. But what we are telling them is this is what you need to emphasize. Because although they speak great English, many times the comprehension is not at the same level. And many times they're not asking clarifying questions. And so it doesn't always come across. You kind of think they know where it's going, and it's just like if we were teaching you in a second language. And like anybody's always embarrassed a little bit in public situations, and you don't like to say, hey, I don't really understand, kind of thing. And so it helped us help the parents, because that visa interview obviously is very important.
Mr. Weaver's good nature does transcend cultures. He helped change a tire on the side of the road.
That's my help.
He did actually help back.
I did notice he was doing it wrong, but I let him proceed for a little while until he called his driver to get help. He had the wrong end in so he could lower the tire. And I thought so, because it didn't make sense that you would be using the hook. But I was very polite.
It was 104 degrees when he was doing that. So that was the one day that we got out of our deli right by the hotel, right by the airport. And we did go to Agra, and we were able to see the Taj Mahal, which was really just fantastic. If you think they're great pictures, it's because they hired a professional photographer to follow us around. We have plenty of glamour shots if anyone's interested.
I have a question. How do you help with your hands in your pockets, Ken?
You're doing it wrong.
That's exactly how he helps around here, too.
So this is what, instead of Oxford gives back, this is Weaver gives back. That's how he does it.
The last day they tried to fit in as many students as they could and as many parents as they could because we were leaving and we kind of gained some momentum in the area and people knew and had told their friends. And so we kind of killed ourselves the Friday that we left. We didn't leave until the evening, so we spent the entire day driving back from Agra and then from phone interviews to in-person interviews. It was just constant, so I do want to highlight that.
And then flew out at 3 in the morning.
Flew out at 3 in the morning, and they added just unexpectedly, without apology, an extra connection. They said, "No, actually, you're going to New York, not to Detroit." Surprise! So we were over 20 hours in flight on the way home. But to have gone through all of that and to, I think, both say that it was absolutely worth it. Thank you for the opportunity to represent us abroad again. It's really easy to be proud of Oxford, and it's exciting in those scenarios to see families light up when they hear about our programming. So, thank you.
Eric?
How do you identify host families for these kids, or have you already?
I know of a few host families that are just sort of in my network who have hosted in the past that always let me know if there's ever a student and something that they're interested in. But I'm always looking for new host families, so thank you. I'll use this as a plug if anyone knows of any families in the area, because that's a concern. We don't want to oversaturate. I think that's something that happened maybe about 4 or 5 years back, is that we had so many students in host homes, and then we started to have 2 students in a host home, and then you start to compromise the opportunity for each kid, the experience. So if anyone's interested in hosting or knows of a family that they want to refer, it is a really cool opportunity that a lot of our students keep in contact with their host families. I just saw one of our graduates at U of M this past weekend. He was on his way home just to hang out with the Reese family, just because they hang out on the weekends still as an adult man. So he still considers them family. It's a neat thing.
Any other questions? Yes, Mary.
I noticed that there was only one female in the group. Is that I'm just curious, you said it was only, I wonder if that was a cultural thing. I mean, it might be. I have a teenage boy and a teenage girl. I think it'd be a little harder sending them.
There's a resistance to sending the females. We have our female graduate on the back of our marketing brochure to remind them that Indian females have come here and been successful. She's in our marketing video telling them how safe she felt. Right. But it is a concern for the parents. And actually, this particular female was not really sold on us. I hope she comes here, but we spent a lot of time convincing her we were good enough for her. She had really, really strong plans for her future. So.
Well, awesome for her.
Yeah.
I had one other question. On day 3 here, we didn't talk about the short-term principal exchange. I just didn't know if...
We have a few different opportunities, but one school in particular that really wants our principals to come over there and their principals to come over here.
Okay.
We didn't talk
Mr.
about
Wolf know about
returning.
that?
We just talked about that.
I was wondering if any of our, Mr. Wolf, anybody else was familiar with this?
There's also a school partnership that we met with on the final day, I believe, that wants us to send over students for like a camp experience. So
Oh, I
we're
got it.
exploring
Okay.
that with an ad team and looking at the timing because their school year is a little bit different than ours.
Okay.
But it's certainly an opportunity.
I appreciate the details in all the things that you have done. This is the way I like seeing information. It's really nice. Thank you for the physical presentation of it too.
Anything else? How many total 11th grade students did you interview? And 10th grade students did you interview?
I think 9.
10th grade?
10th grade students we had 2, I believe.
2.
9th graders, I think we had 2 or 3 9th grade students too, who either their parent was one of the school administrators and they were interested, or they want to keep in touch. I think in total there were like 14 students, if that sounds right. 13 or 14 grand total. So.
And so what's the plan for keeping in touch?
I have WhatsApp, which is an app that some of the administrators who've been abroad have, and Mr. Weaver didn't share his contact information, so I've been WhatsApping with all the parents since I got back.
His hands are in his pocket. His phone.
With the 9.5-hour time difference, but I'm hoping to keep that alive, that conversation alive. And then Stop Hall also, that gentleman over there is kind of like our first line of defense, so he's been talking to the families too.
Would he be a liaison that we would use in the future? I mean, it seems like that was a great experience, a great way.
His relationship is with American Education Gateway.
Right.
So we don't directly have like an agreement with him, but yes, I think the short answer is yes.
We're exploring the opportunities, and that's probably the biggest thing we got back, besides meeting wonderful people over there, having a great experience with them and getting to know them a little more and understanding everything, was not only learning how the educational system works, but all in seeing that, because you can kind of get that over, you know, if you were to do it online as well too, but it was good to get it in person, make those connections, but also see then and make those connections with St. Paul and see how he works, because that doesn't always transfer on an online connection, and so, or a webinar or whatever you want to use to connect that way. And so it was good to meet him personally, interact with him, spent quite a bit of time. He took us to his restaurant as well too. Man, it was very interesting. Every day he introduced another business that he was part of. I mean, literally, he's got a restaurant, he's got this English business.
On the final day of the trip, he
We
said,
thought we heard everything.
I've been saving one of my investments to show you for last, and he had us come in, and he had me sit down in a dental chair, and had a hygienist come over and put on gloves and started taking pictures. So I think Mr. Weaver and I may be in a dental hygienist ad. Yeah, they just opened this office.
Yeah. So his office is in like a
Strip mall.
4-story strip mall where you've got all these fast food restaurants, and in the middle is this dental. It's like one chair and a reception, and it's just, you know, this gentleman who's a dentist. He has a dental office in another place, and he works there during the day, and then he comes here at night and works several more hours, like a full shift. They do not pay dentists quite what Americans pay dentists, I kind of gathered, and so he was working that many hours so that he could get above and get ahead of things. So it was quite an experience, but it was hilarious when we got back and he had one more business to show us.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And then the last item for business is we have for your review, 2 computer labs that we are purchasing or looking to purchase in a couple of weeks after you approve them. One lab is both labs are for the high school. Both labs are for the CTE program. One lab will be for the less expensive one will be for the computer programming class. We are currently undergoing some changes. We are taking a middle school teacher and moving her up to the high school. She has quite a bit of programming experience that was unbeknownst to us, and I was her former principal, and all of a sudden it was like, we need to have we've been trying and trying to work, and Mrs. Langerman has done a fantastic job, but if you know anything about coding and programming, if you're not a coder, you just can't pick it up. It's not like asking somebody to teach geography. And she's done a fantastic job, and she's been just a trooper about things, but we had this opportunity, and so we're going to move Ms. Monkevich up, and this lab is to help support that effort, and we're going to look to be growing our computer programming track, which will hopefully help our robotics program as well too, and start developing some programmers as we look to try to get that track moving. We're also introducing an 8th grade coding class as well, and so hopefully that will help as well down the road. It's going to be a while. Eventually the hope is to maybe have the AP classes, the computer science principles classes and stuff as well, would be like the 2nd year of the track. So that's what the one lab is for, and those classes will be coming for approval down the road, probably at the beginning of next year. And then the other lab is for graphic design classes. Mr. Johnson, there you go. He's pretty expensive to keep around, but his lab is how many years old?
2009.
2009.
So when he says more expensive, he doesn't realize you can buy 3 labs to 1. So kind of work that into
Okay. He's expensive. And so we're looking at replacing that Mac lab. It's about time. He's got a lot, if you go in there, he's got a lot of shells and whatnot. He's trying to keep things up and going in that, and it's time to replace that lab as well. And so we've increased, quite honestly, CTE funds quite a bit, and that's what's going to be used to pay for this.
Anything from board members? Mr. Weaver, thank you very much. Mr. Barnum.
Wow, how do I follow that? Welcome back, Ken.
Yeah.
Like this.
And I'm done. Thank you.
Drop the mic.
Second meeting.
Good evening. Briefly, I want to share with all of you the update on safety for the district. As in your board pack, again, I wanted to update on the Leonard Elementary asbestos abatement that happened over about approximately 2 weeks ago. It went very well, as expected. I obviously want to thank everyone at Leonard Elementary for assisting. I want to thank Tony, and I want to thank Nova Environmental as well. Again, it all went very well. The space, which was the crawl space, is now, all the asbestos has been removed. And so any of our staff, in terms of maintenance technicians that need to get in there for any type of maintenance work, it is fully safe to go into this crawl space. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. In addition to that, I presented in front of you the actual 2019 safety grant front sheet that was sent to us by the Michigan State Police, which details the list of high-level projects that were approved, and then the caveats for approval of those projects, and projects or a project that was not approved. Specifically, section, I believe it's 1.11, really goes over at a very high level on this page. It's about midway through the page. It goes through what was approved by the Michigan State Police for funding. And again, it's access control. And so what that access control is truly the rekeying of our district, true keys that need to be obviously created, new keys throughout the district, both external keys as well as internal keys. So that was approved. We will also be creating a board policy for rekeying of the district as well, so a key policy that will go along with this. So I just want you to be aware that that's coming down as well within the next several months. In addition to that, we were approved for the panic alert system, and so that was part of the pre-plan live that you were provided an opportunity to see. So there's a panic button, and then there's going to be a wall mount kit for each classroom within the district, as well as other rooms within each building. So that's a large component of the grant funds that were approved. Furthermore, there was the 3M glass, the safety glass, if you will, the shatter-resistant glass. So that was an approved item within the grant funds, as well as bollards. And these bollards are located at the high school. Again, bollards, if you're not familiar, are approximately 4 to 4.5 feet, and the vast majority of the bollard is placed below the ground. And then again, those were approved, approximately $18,000 worth of bollards within the grant. So I just wanted to give you a very high level of what was approved. We will be bidding most of this out to ensure that we are getting, again, the best quotes going forward. And we have until June 1st of next year to complete this work. And so I just want June 1st of 2020. So again, Tony and I were going to be working, with creating a lot of this information to put out for bid, and then working with those winning bidders to start this work within the next year. Finally, I wanted to give you an update on ALICE training, specifically at the elementaries. Last year we started ALICE training throughout the district, including elementaries. Last week we furthered that training at the elementaries with both drills, as well, age-appropriate drills, obviously, as well as age-appropriate books that the kids were provided as well, and the teachers then provided, I believe the book was called, bear with me, I'm Not Scared, I'm Prepared. And so a nationally known book that really prepares, again, age-appropriate elementary children for this type of situation. So I just wanted everyone to be aware this is ongoing. And in terms of our ALICE training, and next month, staff will begin their annual training online as well. So, any questions?
I have one.
Yes.
Mr. Barnum, this grant, is this the same grant that you tried to apply for last year?
Yes, it is.
Is this the one where there is more people wanting it than actually get it?
That's correct. Yes.
Since you didn't mention, I just wondered, how much did you get?
We received as a district $442,774.
Bam.
Very, very happy for our district. We deserve it. Our students, our staff, we all deserve it. So I'm very thankful to the Michigan State Police for these funds, and I'm just looking forward to creating a safer district. So thanks.
Good job, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Going back to the asbestos piece of what you were talking about earlier, I think it's important to point out that asbestos is fine in a building until it's touched, until it's moved. I think a lot of people hear that word and maybe they see a commercial on television. Have you ever been, a lawyer or whatever? It's in a lot of buildings, not just school buildings. It's just the time that they were built, that was the material.
Yes.
Until you disturb it, and then it starts to get into the air. So I'm glad that we're making sure that it's safe. But I don't want to give the false impression that we don't have asbestos anywhere in our schools. It's just we've mitigated to the dangerous portion of it. So,
Thank you for that. Anything else?
I just had a
Yeah,
quick
please.
follow-up on the access control systems. That's for all the buildings, you said, all the,
That's district-wide, correct. And again, that access control is specifically rekeying of the district. Okay,
So it's-
true hard copy keys.
okay, so that's, so are we changing the, like the physical keypads and stuff too, the whole?
No,
Okay,
this is just the
okay.
hard copy keys, the cores. The cores
Got
will
it.
be changed.
Okay.
And
I was
new
thinking
keys
of
will be
having to do all this work when we're doing this other work.
No.
It just seemed like an awful lot. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Mr. Pass.
Like my esteemed colleagues this evening, I have nothing new. We love
We appreciate that, thank you.
My pleasure.
Student Services.
Good evening. I just have a few updates to share. Just to refresh everybody's memory, we count students twice a year, in October and then in the fall, and then in February. That's how we receive our district funding. So back in October, we counted the students, and that number we just received back as an audited number. So you have 3 sheets of paper in your packet. The first one says Fall 2018 audited number. And so if you look at on the right-hand side, all the way down at the bottom, a green box that tells you what our audited count was for the fall. It was 6554.73. And if you look at the blue column next to that, you can see what the count was last fall. So you can see that that's an increase of 350 FTE from fall 2017 to fall 2018. So that was a significant increase for us. The second page is our spring preliminary numbers, and that was, it's a decrease of 41 from the fall to the spring. And historically, you always see those spring numbers dip a little bit, so that's not unusual for us to see that drop. And then the third sheet is Mr. Throne's favorite sheet, and it is a historical count through the years, so you can see, class of and follow a class from kindergarten through their senior year, and that's from, what was it? The first class was 2015, all the way up to 2032, our kindergartners. So just wanted to give you an update where we were, if you have any questions.
Yes, Jack.
You said it's normal to see a drop from fall to spring.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you typically account that?
It's across the district. You can look at that sheet and it will tell you specifically where the students, where they left, but typically families move. And if you're gonna move like at that Christmas holiday break. So then that fall or that spring counts a little bit less.
Okay, thank you.
But typically when we track those students are students that are just moving out of the district, moving out of state.
Okay.
Denise, is it fair to say that over the last few years, seated enrollment has decreased while shared and virtual has increased?
I wouldn't say that seated has decreased. Seated has pretty much
Stayed
stayed
level?
the same. And that the virtual and the shared time programs have increased. If you look at that first sheet, I have it broken out. The top half is all of the seated buildings, and then you'll see a seated subtotal. And then the bottom half of the sheet starts with Oxford Virtual Academy and then through all of the shared time schools. So I've kind of separated those two out a little bit if you want to compare seated versus
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's what got me to ask the question.
In the past, this document, they were all, it was in alphabetical order because that's the way my brain thinks. So I changed it to separate them out.
1,700 students. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much.
Yep.
Unscheduled, do I have any more unscheduled? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, let's give permission to the first person. Pamela Beal.
Good evening. I'm Pam Beal. I'm a school social worker in the district. I'm currently assigned to DA, OES, and OPA, but have also been at Leonard and the middle school. Ken was my principal when I was hired, way back when. Not to sound like a broken record, but I am here to express my immense gratitude for the FSL positions. As a school social worker, my primary and legal responsibilities lie with our special ed students, evaluating for disabilities and providing specially designed instruction through IEPs. Because we didn't have elementary school counselors, school social workers were previously taking on general education student concerns. I was getting emails and phone calls from teachers and parents daily. I felt like I was reactively putting out fires and placing band-aids on problems that needed treatment. Around this time last year, me and retired social worker Lisa Dion had the opportunity to sit down with Tim to discuss the social and emotional needs of our elementary students. Tim and Camden genuinely listened to us, our admin, our teachers, and our families. They made the investment in teaching to the whole child. Because of these positions, we are becoming a more proactive district. We're teaching behavior instead of responding to it. Our gen ed students get the social and emotional support they need, and our special ed students get more early intervention. The culture shift has been incredible for students. Social workers across Oakland County are always asking me what Oxford's doing and how we're doing it. We are truly leading the pack. When I started 7 years ago, we had 3 social workers across the whole district. Today we have 6 social workers and 3 family school liaisons. I couldn't be more proud to work here, and starting next year, as my oldest enters kindergarten, have my children attend our schools. Thank you to everyone involved in this investment, and thank you to our 3 family school liaisons, Kelly, Bridget, and Kevin, who took a blank canvas and made something remarkable with it.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes, please.
It was Pam who put this whole vision together. It's Pam who's their mentor. So a round of applause really.
Melissa Cree.
I'm Melissa Cree. I'm a school psychologist in the district, so also involved in social emotional learning from a little different angle. As you can tell by who I'm sitting with, I'm also here in support of our FSLs. I can tell you've already bought into it and you really don't need convincing, and I really appreciate that. And I'm really just here to state the appreciation for that and state the appreciation for the district supporting initiatives like this to support the whole learner. Everything in our education and our background tells us that a student's social emotional learning directly impacts their academic achievement. And until those supports are put into place, we're not going to see the academic growth that we strive to see. I was hired the same year as Pam 7 years ago, and as Ken alluded to, we had minimal as far as interventions. We had some reading support, but it was, most of my job is evaluating for special education services. So it was, I felt like a gatekeeper to board to evaluate and pressure to find a student as eligible as a student with a disability. And then I would feel almost guilty if a student didn't have a disability because it meant that they weren't going to get services that they needed. So that pressure is off because it's not true anymore. You don't have to be eligible as a student with an IEP to receive support services, whether it be academic or social, emotional, or just connecting to resources within the community. We did our best before the FSL position was created, and as I alluded to, a lot of it was putting out fires in students that were really in crisis situations and in crisis mode. But in the end, as Pam also said, our job was with special education students, and we felt like there was a whole population of general education students that weren't getting the attention that they deserved. A lot of times we would try to connect families and give them referrals to outside agencies, but sometimes that wouldn't happen for a variety of reasons. So students weren't getting interventions until they truly were in crisis mode. I really appreciate that that can be alleviated. It's something that I feel really strongly about and something that I really appreciate working for a district that puts the commitment towards students in that way. When I talk to other psychologists in the county, and even we just hired a TC that started a couple weeks ago, just everybody is so impressed at the services that we can offer from a young age to the whole learner. They say Oxford, like half the people don't even know where Oxford is. And then also just that it's such a small district, and I didn't realize that you had so much support and so many options available to students, even with OVA and being innovative in different ways that we can support the whole learner. And I just feel really lucky to be a part of a district like that. I also have a student starting school in the fall at Clear Lake, a kindergartner, and she, not worried about her academically, but she is anxious, and it makes me just feel so good as a parent that if she is going through something at school, which she inevitably will because all kids do, there will be somebody in the building who she can reach out to and who she can speak to about that, because in the end, as a parent, academics are important, but a student's social, emotional, and mental health really is the first thing, I think, and they're so interconnected, and I just wanted to say thank you for investing in that, investing in students in that way.
Thank you very much. And Melissa and Pamela, I just want to make sure that I understand, because I think I do. Your positions were for special ed, but because there was no one dealing with gen ed, you were inundated. So this has actually been a pressure relief for you, not just the teachers, so that you guys can effectively meet the groups that you need to meet.
I think it's benefiting our special ed students who are getting more
Exactly.
individualized.
So they're getting more attention because you're not divided.
Yes.
So thank you for that. I just want to make sure that I understood. So thank you very much.
Teacher pressure relief valve.
Yeah. All right, who's next? Barbara Johnston.
Hi. My name is Barbara Johnson, and I teach 4th grade at Oxford Elementary School. I'm a general education teacher, and I just came in support of the FSL. I mean, they've been very articulate in presenting their program, but I just want to tell you a quick story. Over the last 7 years, I've noticed that my students are coming to me more anxious, more depressed, and with more problems than I am equipped to deal with. And last year, especially, I had a student that was discussing harming himself. And that's the first time in my 17 years of teaching I've ever had a 9-year-old tell me that they didn't want to live anymore. And it happened to be on a day when I didn't really have any support in the building, because at the time we didn't have FSL. So we did our best to support that student and have a check-in, check-out process. So I'm just very grateful that you are recognizing what we all know as educators, that you have to teach the whole child. So I'm just here to say thank you, and I'm very proud to be a teacher in our district, and I talk us up everywhere I go. So thanks.
Thank you so much. All right. Number 10, you have a list of scheduled activities. Anything clarification, sir?
None.
No clarifications. Final board comments. Mary, let's start with you.
Oh, lucky me. Thank you, ladies, for speaking on behalf. I also want to say I was at Lakeville, and in a classroom with Kevin, I got to read to students at Lakeville Elementary during March's Reading Month, and you come very highly recommended. So that was great to hear, and it's great to have that support. Somebody once had said something about it's much easier to help people when they're children than to try to fix them when they get older. So that's it's fantastic that we're doing that and seeing that, because sometimes it's not about more SAT prep. It's not about studying more. You know, it's about being comfortable where you are and who you are. So that's fantastic. Back to, I get really choked up. I'm grateful also. When we're talking about the phase 2, back to building stuff, the transportation and improving that lounge area, I heard that and I noticed it. I've been in there before delivering food, and I think that's really great that we want to make those improvements in that building, and I didn't realize before that was part of that bond project. So I'm really excited about that for them and honoring our transportation people. Something else that Tim had said I wanted to just kind of share with everybody too about, you were talking about, we're just looking into the ideas for possibly changing calendars, things like this. So I just want to remind everybody, people who are listening and watching, that when you hear things about what's going on in a school or at the district or with a teacher, that you go to the source and you verify or learn that it's not true, the stories that you heard, just instead of sharing the stories that you don't even know if they're true or not with other people. Works much better if you just verify things as they come out. So I just kind of want to put that out there. So. And this weekend, there's this thing going on in Detroit down at Cobo Hall. If anybody's interested in robots in any way, shape, or form, there's going to be about, 40,000 people downtown in Cobo. Torque is going to be one of those groups of people competing at the World Championship, First Championship Detroit this weekend. It's all free, so if anybody wants to come down and see what us robotics geeks do, you can see it right here in your local area. Thanks. That's all I got.
Thanks, Mary. Chad.
Yeah, so, quick story, I guess. Today, one of my engineers said that he needed something done, and he says, I would send, it was just sending an email, right, to somebody, here's something I think needs to be done, but I don't feel that my name has the pull. So he goes, Chad, I need to put your name on this as well, right? So, to me, I think that's just ridiculous. I think everybody needs to feel empowered, right? So the reason I say this is thank you for not holding yourself back when you identified something that needed to be done. I think the FSL position, clearly as we've talked about, is something that we desperately needed. And, as a parent in the community, I appreciate that you're looking at the whole student and not just the academic. So thank you. Thank you for bringing that to us so we could learn more about it. And thank you for just being you and doing what you thought needed to be done. Last week, I attended the CTE advisory meeting, set in on the IT curriculum. Mary was sitting in there as well, and something hit me actually while I was sitting there, right? Because we're talking about the curriculum that we've got in place, and everybody's got ideas about what we should be teaching the kids, and while I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, every single one of these parents has a great idea, but the first thing they're doing is they're looking at that teacher and they're saying, you need to teach them this, you need to teach them that. And while all of these things are true, I can just, I'm just putting myself in that teacher's position. I'm thinking, man, this is overwhelming. How in the world do you take a kid for an hour or two a day and teach them all of this stuff? So, you know, when I was thinking about that all again today, as I'm sitting at my desk, you know, working through all of my FTE demand for the projects that are being thrown on me. So I guess let me just put it out there to all of the staff and faculty that are sitting in this room and listening. I understand that as we go through meetings like this, as we walk through the course of the school year, we put a lot of demands. We're asking for a lot of stuff. Just know that we understand that it's a lot. You know, I think there comes that when we start talking about all these different things that we want to do. Obviously, we have to start talking about priorities. But it's a lot of stuff. I guess I just wanted to put it out there, right? So you know that if as you're sitting at your desk or in your classroom, know that I understand, and hopefully that the rest of us understand that there is a lot to do, and we appreciate everything that you're getting done. We're seeing a lot of good things in this district, so thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Again, I echo what everybody else has said. I'm thoroughly impressed with what I've seen. The biggest thing that impressed me, one thing I coach my team to work on is don't complain about a project. Don't complain about something that's broken. Don't come to me and complain about it unless you're saying, here's a solution. And the fact that you took that initiative and what you guys are doing it's very impressive. My hat's off to all of you. I'm impressed. I was at a heavy-duty trade show a couple weeks ago. I missed the last board meeting, but I did call Mr. Donnelly afterwards because one thing that really sparked an interest, and I know this is something maybe down the road, but we listened to a pretty good guest speaker talk about how in schools we train kids, get them ready for college, get them ready to be the next lawyer, the next doctor, whatever. But the one thing he was really impressing on everybody is there is a very large shortage of welders, diesel mechanics. I mean, these are all people that are making six figures because they're in such demand. And he spoke to a pretty large group about, we don't teach these programs anymore. And they're getting in with some of the colleges, and they would really like to get into some of the schools, and they've got funding from GM, from Caterpillar, from Cummins to get into this. I got some information to go over with Mr. Donnelly a little more. But I mean, just that's such a void that we could be the pioneers on. That I think could be good. Kind of echoing what Mary said, I know the robotics are down in Detroit this week. We actually have a pretty big event going on here this weekend. And if any of you haven't had the opportunity, Oxford Gives Back is a program that it's impressive. The work that they do for people that really need it is, you gotta go, you gotta volunteer and help the community. It's a great program.
Thank you, sir. Eric?
So Pam, Melissa, and Barb, you came here tonight and sat through a couple hours, listened to some really horrible presentations.
Not yours, Ken.
Not yours, Ken. Sorry, never mind. So that said a lot to me, that you're willing to work all day and come here and sit and lift up the FSL team. That meant a lot to me, and I'm sure to them as well, to have all that positive feedback. And you, Bridget, Kelly, and Kevin, for me, I feel like you're kind of forging the way through a new process for us, for the mental and academic health of our students. That means a lot to me anyway. And I know it's hard to kind of spend your whole day kind of dealing with some of the worst stuff you could possibly deal with, and you go home and you kind of let that go, and you realize you got to get up the next day and do it all over again every day, and you got to come in and try to be positive and you know that by the end of the day, you're not gonna have anything left. So, to me, that means a lot. And whether you realize it or not, you are probably saving lives by doing your job. So congratulations on that, and I look forward to seeing what you guys can do next year. So.
Thank you.
I really do echo that, what you said. I think the Family Services Liaison team is a great program, and I think any intervention that can be brought on early on can just make that is restorative practices at its core. That is like restoring the person as a human being. And that's just an awesome thing that we're recognizing that as a district to incorporate that as part of their educational profile. Because I think we talk about a lot of things and IB and all this different stuff that we talk about, but if some of these kids have, major emotional distractions going on in their lives, it really doesn't matter what else we give them. And we have got to fix that. And I would love to see this bleed into, helping out make more at Crossroads or at Bridges or the other places where I think we've got some need also. So, and it does not surprise me that Pam Beal had a lot to do with it because she's part of my team and I love her. And the reason I asked specifically about whether or not these were gen ed kids or special ed kids, because the special ed kids get people like that every day. Every day. So the gen ed kids need people too. Because just because they don't have an IEP and they don't meet that emotional impairment doesn't mean that they are not getting impairments that are affecting their academic baselines. I'm talking baselines. I'm not even talking about getting up here. I'm talking baselines. So that's why I asked the question earlier, because I wanted to make sure people understood. I already knew that they weren't IEP students, but I wanted to make sure people understood that we are lucky to have those other ladies already on our IEP kids teams, like my kid. And now we've got that team. So that's pretty awesome. That's good.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Dan.
Well, I'll first say that thank you, Ken, for the presentations. We give everybody a hard time here, and I think that's, I shouldn't say a hard time, but we kind of joke. And sometimes that comes across as maybe we're not doing our job, or what it may come across as maybe we're just not being as professional as we probably should be. But I will say that there's a comfort level that Tim has created with the cabinet. And the cabinet, I hope you guys feel that we're comfortable with you and you're comfortable with us, and we have good discussions back and forth. So that's kind of where this all comes from, and this kind of, and you have to have fun doing this, because you roll into situations where it's hard. You see kids that are falling behind, and I've seen it now for, it's amazing that you said you've been here 7 years. That's how long I've been here. And so it's a long time. And you see some pretty tough stuff. And so I'm, Bridget, Kevin and Kelly, I can't say enough about what you all are doing. And Eric said it very, very well. We talk about every student reaching their maximum potential. And we truly live it on this board. We want every student to reach their maximum potential. And it doesn't matter where you start, it's where you end. And we can't let anybody fall through the cracks. If they're a high achieving learner or they're a low achieving learner, we want the high achieving learners to go through the glass ceiling, and we want the lower achieving to get as high as they possibly can. So those are all things that we truly believe in, and we saw it years ago, and it takes time, it takes time to move a ship in the right direction, and we're finally getting there, and it's a lot. We've added Anita, Ken's dialed in on it. Our central office staff is dialed in on what can we do every single day to affect every student that we have. So we're living it here, and this is the easy part of it. you have the difficult part of it. So thank you all very much for what you do, and thank you all for 7 years ago realizing that there was a significant need and letting us know it from the board's perspective. Tim, you touched upon earlier when Ken was making his presentation about finances and taxes and how that all goes into to what we do here. And you hit the nail on the head. When we pay taxes, whether it's a 45% increase at the pump, I don't want to pay it. I mean, I drive 100 miles every day, and that's a lot of money. And the way that you put it today was sometimes this is a cause and effect type of time. One lever moves one way, another one goes the other way. So we have to keep that in mind. But what we've done with the 27th, 28th, well, it's 28 schools, and we're second to the last behind South Lyon. What we've done with our money shows. And it's not just because we have a focus one way, it is because we have an entire group of people in our central office and in our buildings that realize that everybody is important. And I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it, sometimes athletics goes without a little bit more money than what the school just south of us gets. Maybe we take a little bit of money from our facilities and we shift it over to the classroom. Maybe we're not buying the latest and greatest and newest and the best of everything, but we're putting it where it matters. And we're scrutinizing every amount of, every dollar that we spend, we're making sure that it goes in the right place. Some people will disagree with it, but that's okay, because when you get down to it, the kids are the ones that matter, the students and their outcomes, and it's going to be a while before we realize that, but we're getting there. And then the last thing, I think you were saying earlier, and I forget, I don't know if it was Barb or one of the three of you said, I go out and I talk, and they said, well, Oxford, this little school district, and I just kind of wrote down something, and I don't mean to be profound, but if it sticks, it does. You don't need to be big to be great. So take that for what it is. When you go into the classroom every day and you go out and you tell people, well, we're from Oxford, you don't need to be big to be great, and just continue to be great. So that's it.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Thank you. First thing I have is just to ask you all to look at that draft resolution and consider supporting that after the work that was been done. I think it's great to say, hey, state of Michigan, listen to what's done. With my other comments, I guess I want to go through it with kind of what makes Oxford special. It is not hard to find a problem. It's often hard to admit you have one. And so in my industry, it was corrective actions and continuous improvement, right? Admitting that you're doing something wrong or not well enough, and then working to fix it. What I love about our school district is a willingness to hear that we got an issue and wrestle with it, whether it's a class size, whether it's kids aren't getting their needs met. I mean, if anybody doubts that our desire is the kid, just see what it is we sweat bullets over and what it is we try to do. Because that really was a process of going, yuck, we got an issue, how are we going to solve it? And we fought to do it, and I'm proud of that. How many districts would put out a survey like this and it balances, right? How many staff people and parents out there would go, yeah, we see it about the same. I don't know that that's really common. I would imagine it's probably uncommon that we would have that kind of parallel view. Some might think we're crazy, looking at international students and looking at bringing people here. but we're a global society. We're a global society. We have got to start doing this kind of overlap education so that we're prepared to go to college and see that 25% of the kids at college are not American. And to see that in the workplace, you've got cultures and other languages, as Ken said. And this is the kind of stuff we do because we know it's what has to happen if we're going to have the whole kid ready to be as successful as they can be out there. Then I guess the last two things is, how do you afford doing what we do? The only way you do that is cutting edge thinking. Out of the box, on the edge. It's Sam going 1 year and getting the thumbs down, not a dime, going at it again with everything he's got and getting $440,000. It is a district that has a flat-seated number, but we talk about shared education with all of those schools and all those individuals. When we talk about OVA, and then you look at 1,700 additional students, well, that's where the money's coming from, right? I mean, here we are, as you said, the second lowest, in the district. So how do you make up the difference when you're not getting what you think you should be getting? Well, you can either pout about it or you can go get it. And you got a district that goes and gets it in whatever way that they can. And so proud of you, proud of your team. That's how all this other stuff's possible. How about you, sir?
I don't think I'm going to add anything to that other than amen, and I'll just.
I thought you were going to take us out for ice cream or something.
Boy. Anything under other?
No, nothing.
All right, with that, it's a great day to be on. Meeting adjourned.